I know there's no song. Everyone's very disappointed, but I worked very hard for a long time, couldn't find a song related to our topic today, so we're gonna sit in silence for a little bit. But it is good to see everybody. A little bit of a different setup here. I'm working on a different device. Also been a little while since we've been in here in this little format, but it's still great to see everyone. We'll do a quick start off with a quick recap of where we were a few weeks ago, and then kind of jump into a new topic here. And so. Uh, we touched on over a break, for those who weren't aware, we touched on a topic that I really care about, which is observation skills. And at the Spectrum, we encountered opportunities to use our observation skills in both design, in how the spectrum, parts of the spectrum are designed and laid out, and also people, how to kind of like see stories that are unfolding in front of us and keep track of people as they're going about their business. Uh, Highlight of the time in my mind was when we were able to use observation skills to talk to a total stranger and encourage him to do something um, that is running through a fountain. And so that was very fun. And so we can talk more about that if you want to talk more about that later. I have some recordings of that if you'd like to see those. But that was a really good time, just kind of getting practice with a skill that I think is very important, very useful, and yet not really talked about enough. And so also we way back multiple weeks ago we were talking about imagination, kind of the role imagination plays in empathy. Read through the responses that were submitted. They were all very good. Really appreciated that. It was cool to see kind of that application into personal life. Moving on to this week, this will hopefully be a bit of a shorter topic, but I think it's a very interesting one, and I hope that it'll be something that kind of sticks around with you as you kind of go about your day. Elaboration. Uh, I've got a feeling you have no idea where this is going to go, and that's okay. But I want to start off just kind of with like the big guiding principle, the reason we're even like introducing this topic in the first place, and that is the principle of linguistic relativity. Um, there is different hypotheses for this, but this is the simplest name. In short, it's the idea that the structure of our language, the way we approach language, the words that we use, is able to modify the things that we see, the things that we know within our world, which is a very abstract and scary way of putting it. I think there's an easier way of putting it, and that'll be through actually an experiment. So this is a relatively famous experiment. I'm going to butcher the research in presenting it to you, but you're welcome to look it up yourself, and we can talk about it more after as well. This is a famous experiment that has to do with kind of linguistic interpretation. In Russian, they have two different words. Instead of just saying the color blue, they use голубой and синий, and those refer to light and what we would call light and dark blue, respectively. Now, to be clear, they do not have the word for blue. Their definition of what we would call blue is all of that color range is all divided into these two words. Now, when these subjects were presented with uh, like a color comparison test and they were asked to compare, is this color the same as that color? They responded faster when the colors were distinctly either голубой or синий, but not when it was within a category, which in science is a bit kind of a weird approach, but the result is what matters, and that is basically that because the Russian language has distinct words to define aspects or characteristics of blue, it's almost as if they can better see that color blue than English speakers would be able to see it. And so it's all the same color spectrum in the end, but the fact that they have a word for this concept of blue means that they're able to more easily identify it and they're more easily able to spot it. And it's kind of like they're seeing an extra color, which is really weird to think about, the fact that we could have like different perspectives on the same result, but the fact that they have a word for it means they can see it. And so I was kind of wondering, like, is this is there a way of using that knowledge in other aspects of our life? And so I've got a weird one. I'm curious if it'll resonate with anyone, but um, I want to hypothesize that we can use this concept of words to describe something in human behavior. And I'm not a psychologist, but I'm hoping to make a case for that within the next half an hour or so. Um, and so the kind of the idea that I'm trying to put forward is that if you are able to more directly describe what you see in other people's behavior, it'll eventually become easier for you to see that behavior unfold, in addition to also making it more likely for you to participate in that behavior, more likely for you to recognize it in other people, etc., etc. Basically, if you can use words to describe what you're seeing, you're more likely to see it. And that can apply to like good things and bad things. I think positive behavior that people want to see unfold. It could also be like bad things. If you have someone who you don't like very well, um, if you're able to describe their behavior, what annoys you about their behavior, you're more likely to see those negative things, and that's certainly true. But we're going to focus on positive stuff today. And so the idea that if we're able to practice describing things in a very detailed manner, I want to think that that's going to help us to see it more. And so um, I think there's kind of two ways of approaching that idea of describing behavior. And so the ways that are most easy for me to understand and that I'll present is um, that of the means and the motives. So the means are like how someone does something, how they approach an issue, how their behavior works, like in what way are they using their behavior a certain way, things like that. While the motives is like the why of the situation. Why are they choosing to do this? Why are they choosing to do that? And if you can identify the means and the motives, like the what's and the whys of people doing things, there's a chance that you'll be able to kind of apply it and recognize it for what it is, and you'll see it, which if it's a positive trait is really cool. So that's a lot of weird like hyperbolic theory talk, and that's not very helpful. So let's go to an example. um, and I think this is a really good example of that you're able to like kind of put this whole abstract concept into an idea. So Sam is funny. But you can put anyone's name in there. Put your friend's name in there. Oh, so and so is funny. Sam is funny. He's a funny person. Now, can you break that down further? Because when you say Sam is funny, that can mean so many different things. That can mean so many different ways. There's so many different ways of being funny. There's different reasons why you would want to be funny. And if you admire a friend for being funny, if you admire Sam for being funny, then you would want to specifically isolate which part of him being funny you are looking up towards, you're admiring. And so first we'll start with like the means, the how they're being funny. So Sam is funny. What are different ways of being funny? Can you put that in the more detailed terms? So like one example is like, okay, charismatic person, skilled at using his body, his voice. Like it's like a physical comedy is a term for it. Like Sam is really good at physical comedy and kind of being expressive and dancing around, stuff like that. Like that's something that Sam is good at. And so when you say, I think Sam is really funny and I like that, are you referring to that because Sam is kind of that big physical comedy person? Is it because Sam is very socially aware, socially intelligent, and is whenever there's a situation, Sam is able to understand, is to be able to read the room and work with people and pick out things that he wants to say that'll be more funny to people. And so when you say Sam is funny, you're not just admiring the fact that, oh, Sam makes people laugh, but you're admiring the fact that Sam is very smart in his strategy of making people laugh. That's the big difference. It's not just saying that Sam is funny. It's you're admiring specifically Sam is strategic and very intelligent in his comedy, and that's what you're looking up towards. Um, another example, Sam is like very witty, right? There's a situation unfolding, and Sam is ready to go with the response. Like always has something, making up something new on the spot, and that way of thinking is what you admire about Sam being funny. Because kind of recapping here, like again, we say Sam is funny, but someone being funny for physical comedy is very, very different from someone being witty and able to synthesize new jokes and things on the spot. And so if you're able to pick out that reasoning, there's some you're more likely to be able to see that behavior unfolding more and more and more. Um, and so transitioning over to like the motives, like why is Sam funny? If you wanted to start with the means, which I would recommend, start with the means of what you see funny about Sam, and then transition us to like a why. Like one reason could be that Sam just loves making other people laugh for the sake of other people. It's the fact that he can bring like levity or joy to someone. That's very rewarding for Sam. And so when you say that you admire Sam for being funny, could it be that you're actually admiring his motivation to to bring others happiness? And that's very admirable and worthy of admiration. And so perhaps that's the reason you are so drawn to Sam when Sam is funny. Um, could it be that you see Sam approaches comedy like a skill, like a game, and he's constantly working on it, and you admire the dedication to the craft, and not just the fact that oh he makes me laugh, but also like Sam works really hard for this. And so when you say you admire Sam, you admire how much time Sam's putting into this, the effort he's putting into being funny. Is that what you admire when you say that you think Sam is funny? Is it that you admire his possible like reasoning for trying to be funny with certain people, that he's trying to connect with other people, that it's a way of breaking the ice and bringing people together. And so when you say that you admire Sam for being funny, really you're admiring the fact that he tries to bring people together. Again, very different reasons for why you might look up to Sam for being funny, right? It's the notion that he makes you laugh, that's part of it certainly, but also the motivation he has to either bring others joy or to bring people together or just to be better himself. Those are all such different reasons, but by isolating and really elaborating on the details of that situation, you're more likely to appreciate it for what it really is. And I think that's a really cool position that you can be in once you start to practice this skill. um, I'll run through another example, and this is a common one as well. Jessica is confident, right? Confidence, like, oh, that person's so cool. They're always so confident. But again, confidence can have so many reasons as to why you think it's a good thing to have, and why you would think that person is good at what they're doing. One of the means that, like, just the reasons or the ways that Jessica shows her confidence is that maybe she's confident because instead of taking in this fear, she takes it and breaks it down and makes it less scary. And so, when presented with a scary situation, Jessica's really good at breaking down that fear and showing why it's not a problem, and then tackling the situation. And so, when you say you respect Jessica for being confident, really you're respecting her skill at breaking down that fear and kind of going onward with it. Contrast that with the fact that maybe she's absolutely terrified, but she's good at pushing through fear. Again, both of those are models of confidence in like human interaction, and both of those are very admirable, but they're both very, very different. One of them is Jessica breaking down and destroying this fear, and the other is working with it, coexisting with it, and fighting through it. And so when you say someone is confident, which aspect are you actually looking for in that? Another possible example: Jessica constantly aims higher and she's comfortable with, and is always trying to make herself uncomfortable. That's an example of confidence. Again, very different from working through fear or breaking down fear. But if you're able to define that as the reason you admire Jessica's confident, then suddenly you're able to more accurately appreciate this confidence for what it is. I keep rehashing that point because it's such an abstract way of thinking about how others act. But once you actually get into it and once you actually see it play out in front of you, it really is a beautiful, like a beautiful sight to kind of unfold. And so I'm hoping you'll consider that. Um, we'll jump back to motives. One reason Jessica might be very confident, and something you'd respect about her, is that she's goal oriented, and having confidence is like a tool. It allows her to tackle her goals and achieve what she needs to achieve. And so that motivation, that drive that Jessica has, you're really respecting the drive that she has to use confidence and power through with it. Um, again, very contrasting to the possibly Jessica wants to keep people calm. She wants to preserve others and make sure that they're not stressing out. And so even though she may be stressed out, she will put on this idea of confidence to get the team ready to go and fighting through when it really is an uncertain time. And so if you have a classmate, you have a peer who you think is very confident, could they be doing that because they are trying to protect other people? It's possible, and that's another key point is that when it comes to evaluating something like means, that's a very objective thing. You can see someone doing something. You can take notes. You can observe that. You can watch that unfold. When it comes to motives, it's not always as clear. I mean, everyone has their secret reasons for doing stuff or things that they don't talk about. And so you will never really know someone's motives when watching them uh, go through a certain behavior set. But it's kind of like it's kind of like the lottery. If you keep guessing enough, eventually you're going to get it right. I think that's a really it seems like it wouldn't work. It seems like you can never truly understand someone's motives, but with enough experience, you'd start to see these trends of how people or why people do the things that they do, and you start to be able to like, categorize it. And we'll see more of that in our next example. But still, again, you may not know that Jessica is actually very scared and is trying to protect her peers by being confident. Maybe Jessica doesn't even know that. But if you were to guess that, there's a chance that you'd be right, and that could be something worth admiring, worth appreciating. Um, just kind of the last quick point is Jessica burning desire to improve as a person, and so not just achieving her goals, not just achieving growth in terms of like performance or academics or extracurriculars, but just as a person, trying to be a better person and using confidence as a tool to be a better person. That's definitely an admirable reason to be confident. And so when you say that you admire Jessica for her confidence, are you really admiring her for her desire, her burning desire to improve as a person? Again, I keep rehashing the same points over and over again because it's just such a different way of approaching thinking about behavior. But that's a very different reason than the idea that Jessica is trying to preserve peace or put on this image for others. And so it's a possible answer. We don't know the correct answer, but it's worth throwing out there. Let's go to this last kind of rehearsed example I have, and that's with Mrs. Smith. Mrs. Smith's a teacher. Mrs. Smith could be your teacher for all we know. Um, but I think a lot of students would say, "Oh, my teacher is nice. My teacher is nice. It's fun to be around. Nice person." Um, are you able to kind of take that a little bit further, take that a little bit deeper, and start to pinpoint certain aspects of that behavior that you're really resonating with and why you're defining it as nice behavior? I have a couple here that I think are pretty common. I've seen it happen at IUSD, and I know it happened it went with my teachers as well. And so a couple here for your consideration. Um, Mrs. Smith is nice because Mrs. Smith greets students at the door, right? That's a very simple thing to do. That's a very simple way of showing that you want to be a nice person, of being a nice person, just saying hi to students at the door. But is that way of approaching being nice? Is that way of approaching being kind? Is there more to that than maybe most students realize? Well, I certainly think so. As it turns out, that's you may not know, but that's actually a skill set that teachers are trained in. Um, there's legal ramifications for their role in the kind of education system, but part of that is checking in on students. And so teachers are trained to oftentimes either at the door or during class kind of keep an eye on students and see what's going on. And so they attend trainings for it, they do it actively. And when they're saying hi to people, it's not that they just want to say hi and then move on. They're oftentimes looking for specific things that are going on with certain students. Is anyone acting out of the ordinary? Is anyone being more aggressive than normal? Anyone being more sad than normal? Anyone non-responsive? Things like that kind of behavior that would allow a teacher to intervene in a dangerous situation or a situation involving a student's mental health. And that's a very admirable thing that you should definitely appreciate. But if you can't isolate that behavior from just the general nebulous concept that Mrs. Smith is a nice teacher, then you'll never actually be able to appreciate that unfolding. Similar one, Mrs. Smith makes herself available all hours of the day. I had a teacher in high school who you could email at like 11 p.m. and she would respond to you at like 11:03. Or she would be at Disneyland and waiting in a line, she'd be texting back an answer to a math question. Or she was one of those people who didn't need sleep. And so you would email her and then she would write back to you at 3 in the morning, like as she's getting up to do her exercises. And it was just crazy. Um, that, from a student's perspective, is a very nice thing to do. It's nice to be able to reach your teacher and ask about questions and things like that. But similar to that first point, right? Like, are there reasons why that might be something Mrs. Smith is putting effort into doing? Is there's a reason why she's emphasizing that in what her persona that she affronts to her students. Um, Being reachable builds connections. Being reachable shows that you are dedicated to your students, that you care. Being reachable allows you to intervene at odd hours when students feel like they have no one else to turn to. That's a very real problem that a lot of people, especially kind of the middle high school teenage demographic, that's a problem a lot of people face. And so the fact that Mrs. Smith is so responsive to emails, sure, it could just be that she's got a lot of energy and just wants to take care of things in the moment, but there could be a greater reasoning behind that. And so the fact that you're able to pick that out of her toolbox and actually recognize it and say, wow, I appreciate that Mrs. Smith does that. That will allow you to kind of be more grateful for the whole for approaching and kind of talking about Mrs. Smith to your friends, to your parents, whatever, whatever that may be. And so again, if a similar last point, walks around during class, asks students how they're doing. Uh, Another example of checking in on students as they're working on an assignment or something like that doesn't necessarily mean that Mrs. Smith is actively trying to monitor student progress so she can move on to the next slide and things like that. It's again, it could very easily be Mrs. Smith is trying to check in on students, see what kind of interactions they're having with their peers, see if there's anything kind of going on behind the scenes that she doesn't know about that she needs to know about, allows her to help people. Um, if you can, again, like for most students, for myself even, like it's so easy to kind of get swallowed up and oh yeah, Miss Smith walks around and she's always talking to kids or she tells jokes or things like that. Like, oh, good teacher, I like it. But by picking out the fact that specific repeatable behavior that she does, it kind of allows you to recognize it and appreciate it for what it really is and not just that Miss Smith is a nice person overall. Looking at motives, you will never really know why your teachers do what they do. They'll tell you some reasons, but not all of them all the time. And when it comes to especially like the teacher student dynamic, there's a lot to be said about like what teachers are trying to accomplish with certain behaviors. And so again, like greeting students at the door or like checking in on students, that's just a polite thing to do. I think people should do it in general, but a possible reason that you may not think about until unless you're one of the students who benefits from it is the fact that perhaps Mrs. Smith is putting in a lot of intentional effort to serve as like a mother figure for students who don't have one. That's a very common reasoning why people go into education or working with child development, things like that. It's serving as a role model, as a parental figure for students who may not have that kind of stability at home. That's very, very encouraging, very inspirational. And for a lot of teachers, that's one of the reasons why they do it. And yet, if you aren't able to see that or aren't able to identify that possible motive when just saying that a teacher's nice, you just can't appreciate it for what it is. And so um, it's so cool to be able to pinpoint these behaviors and reasonings within people around you to to really, I keep saying, to really appreciate it and to be so grateful that you have it. um, it's one of those situations where it's almost like a Dunning-Kruger situation where you feel like you know someone, you know a teacher, but there's so much you don't know about why they're doing it and how they're doing it. And the more you try to fight to learn more, the more you pick out, the more you list of the things that they're doing and why they're doing it, it just it really enriches your relationship with them, whether or not you are close to them, or just kind of a passive student in the wings, so to speak. Another possible motive Mrs. Smith has to being nice is that she's always telling jokes, she's always playing music to try and make school a lighthearted place. Because for a lot of people, childhood is great. Uh, it's a time where they can grow and have fun, but there's a lot of students uh, in our world, in our country, our state, our city, who go home and life is not very good. And the idea that school is a respite from that, a school is a safe haven from that, could be a reason why, despite the kids not liking the music that Miss Smith puts on, she still does it because she's trying to make the environment more welcoming and more calm for those who need it. Um, uh, is that going to be, if you were to ask Mrs. Smith why she puts on music at the start of class, or why she's always trying to tell really really bad puns, you're probably not going to get that she would probably never tell you that. She would probably never tell you that she's trying to make the environment safe for students who are struggling at home. But I bet if you were to really sit down and analyze it, I bet you that would be one of the reasons she's trying to create that environment. Um, and just another final point, like the idea that Mrs. Smith wants to give students the tools to make the world better. Cliche point, sure, but setting up the next generation for success is something that I think everyone would say, oh, that's a good thing. That's nice for her to do. But by identifying that and really highlighting it as her motive for doing stuff, you can kind of appreciate the things that she's doing and why she's doing it. Um, I have a couple more examples that I'm going to go through. These aren't really as scripted. As I'm going through these, though, I would ask that everyone maybe pick a peer, like a student they know. You're all going to have to do this for homework, but I'm going to ask everyone just kind of grab one person in their mind right now, and I may ask someone to kind of volunteer and talk through that person with me. I'll kind of do like an interview format, low stakes, no pressure. But let me give a couple kind of unrehearsed examples of people in my life who I feel like you can appreciate for who they are by analyzing their behavior. And so I have one friend from high school. Her name is Andy, and the default I want to say is like, oh, Andy is super nice, just a nice person to be around. But when I kind of like took a step back and like wanted to figure out like why do I think Andy is so nice? One of the reasons is because she did this thing where she would like get little pieces of paper and like draw pieces of fruit on it. And all she would do is like draw a piece of fruit on it, and then on the back like write like a little note like, oh, thank you for blah 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 blah, or this part of class today was really really funny, or something like that. And it was always like very simple. But when I started like really sitting down and thinking about like why that was so interesting to me, why I found that why that stuck out in my mind so much, I tried to kind of break down like that that artwork, so to speak, a little bit further. And where I kind of got with that was that, like, yes, Andy's a nice person, but the reason I appreciate her and the reason I liked her behavior was because Andy put in rehearsed, planned, intentional effort into being kind in a very targeted manner. So the idea that she was like going home, she's drawing these little cards and then giving them out to like random people throughout her day, that shows a lot of intention. Like that shows that this isn't like, oh, like a random acts of kindness, like she's like throwing out a compliment here and there. Like she put effort and she put planning into being kind. And then when she put effort and planning into being kind, she did that with very very targeted ways. It was always a very specific thank you for doing this, or this part of class was really funny, or something very 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 specific that you could lock in on. And that's why I have so much admiration for how Andy approaches her interactions with other people, because not only is she putting in a time and work into being kind, but she's doing it strategically. She's doing it intentionally. And I thought that was just really cool. And so once I kind of got to that point, I was like, wow, I felt more and more grateful to have had classes with Andy and have spent that time with her, because I started to like really appreciate not just getting this little piece of paper with a fruit on it, but I was able to appreciate all the work that goes into it, all the thinking and the planning that goes into it. And that's started to change how I do stuff, because like now like I feel like I could do that. Like I could model that behavior if I saw it unfolding. And so I started trying to do that with like little cards that I pass out to like people here on campus at UCLA. Um, and by by just taking it away from the idea that, oh, this person's nice, and really breaking down as to why I think it's so cool, I was able to pick out behaviors that I could copy. And I just think that's really cool, because I don't think Andy realized like the effect that she would have when making these little cards with like color pencils, doodling stuff. But like suddenly, by breaking down her behavior and really honing in on it, it's turned into a tradition now that I'm trying to continue. And that's just really cool. Another example I would point to, I have a friend from high school. His name is Colin. And the default that everyone just says is Colin is smart, right? Colin is smart. Everyone agrees that Colin is smart. But I think there's more reasoning as to why you want to break that down, because people are smart for different reasons. Some people have just this born innate talent, so to speak. But I don't think Colin was like a savant. He wasn't like a child prodigy, so to speak. Um, Colin had this constant hunger to take in information, and it was never like intrusive or obsessive, but it was always, I want to know why that happens. I want to know why that works, or I want to know that fact, and then connect that to the other fact. And he was constantly doing that with other people. He was constantly doing that with in class, with asking questions. In language arts, when we would do reading, it was always pinpointing certain details and taking it in. And his ability to take in information allowed him to better express information, better communicate information, not only in the academic sense for grades on tests or on essays, but also just to other people. And he was better at not only doing well on a math test, for example, but also teaching the math to a student who didn't understand it, like me, quite a few times during the last school year. And so the fact that everyone agrees that Colin is smart, like that's great. That's great. But if you're able to sit down and say, I think I admire Colin for being so good at taking in information and then being able to apply that information in real life. That's an example of being smart, but that's such a richer perspective. It's a more vibrant, colorful perspective on someone's behavior. And having meditated on that and thought that through, it's like, wow, I really do appreciate that time that I spent with him, um, as a result of dealing with this kind of like this person who just takes everything in. You can ask him questions, and if he doesn't know, he's going to look it up right away, and that kind of behavior. It was really cool. And so I'm glad I was able to kind of like sit down and figure out why it was so cool that he was just a interesting person to be around, besides the fact that he was just smart. Um, and so with that, I'm going to ask that we do like a little mini interview. Again, low pressure. But does anyone have like a peer in mind that they feel like they could talk about? You don't have to have anything rehearsed. I'm going to kind of lead the discussion a little bit. But is anyone willing to uh, kind of sit down with me for a couple minutes and just talk about one of your peers um, in kind of an interview format? Any takers? I am going to pick someone if no one says anything. So you can save your peers by unmuting and talking to me. All right, Ferris, let's do this.
Okay, do I just say what
So,
I
so
think?
yeah, so let me ask you, let's just start with like let's start with that three-word sentence. Like, who is this person and what do you admire? What do you think about them?
Um, Abanov is funny.
Funny. Okay. Very nice. Ivanov is a good choice. Let's kind of take that a little bit further. So like when you say Ivanov is funny, what aspects of being funny or what behaviors of being funny kind of stand out to you when you think about Ivanov?
Well, sometimes he's really clueless and he just unintentionally makes you laugh. That because of how clueless he is sometimes.
Okay, and so do you think that um, that behavior is like intentional? Like, is he using that to like make people laugh? What about that kind of stands out as to uh, why he might be trying to, why he might do that, or why he might present that to other people versus just not saying anything if he doesn't understand something?
I I don't believe that it's intentional, but I believe that he has a talent for saying the right things at the right time because of the context of what's happening.
Gotcha, gotcha. Yeah, I mean that's a great point. Not the skill to like work with the kind of like a situation and reading the room is what that's called. That's a wonderful skill set to have, and so the fact to be able to bring that to the table is pretty cool. So thank you for that. Let's do another one. Let's do Stanley. Let's pick a peer. We don't have to know him. If you have someone from school or an extracurricular something like that, but pick a peer and give me like that three word sentence.
Mm. Zane is very social.
Very
Or
social.
Zane is social.
Social. Sure,
Zane is
absolutely.
social.
Okay, so when you say that Zane is social, um, can you kind of pinpoint a little bit more as to like what that social behavior looks like, or the ways that Zane chooses to be social? What about that stands out to you as you think about Zane?
He greets all of his teachers when he walks in the door, and he also like greets all of his friends when he sees them, even if they're like not in their in your direct path of direction, something like that.
Okay, yeah, that's a perfect example because it's a unique behavior, right? Not everyone does that, and so by picking that out, you're able to you by saying it out loud, it shows that you recognize that it's happening, and that's great. Um, what's a possible reasoning for why Zane does that, whether conscious to him or not, whether he realizes it or not? What's a possible motive he might have to do that, to be that greeting? Is it are you I can take a couple of guesses. Is it more that he enjoys seeing other people, or is it that he's trying to make other people feel welcome, or is it for himself? What do you kind of feel like is a possible motive there?
I think a combination of everything you just said. He likes to make people feel included and welcome, but like at the same time, like interacting with people also makes himself happy.
Very cool. Okay, so that it kind of goes both ways then. So he not only gets value for himself out of interacting with people, but he also wants to provide that value, that's that interaction with the people. That's fantastic. And I think the fact that you're able to recognize that means that you can appreciate that behavior, not just for it being beneficial to you individually, but also you can appreciate the behavior as it's beneficial to the peers around you and to Zane himself. And I think that's really cool. Let's do one more. Davina, do you have someone in mind?
Yes.
All right,
So Sophia
give
is
me one.
really nice.
Okay, perfect. Easy one. So let's take nice because that's such a big idea. Can you break it down a little bit more for me? What specifically about Sophia makes her nice?
Okay, so um she's very helpful. So if you don't know what to do in like the middle of class or you tuned out for like the last 5 minutes and you're absolutely clueless or you just need help with something or you need someone to talk to, she's always there.
That's fantastic. And so helpful when you need someone to talk to, she's there. Are you able to take that even further? This is a bit tough, right? I'm kind of pushing you a little bit, but she's helpful. Um, in what way is she helpful? Is it that she is constantly paying attention, and you can ask her anything, she's taking it all in, she can give it to you? Is that she's looking for ways to help other people and kind of being active in that sense? Is it that she's kind of uh, keeping track of where everyone else is going, and so when someone asks her a question, she knows what they need specifically? What about being helpful? Are you able to kind of elaborate a little bit more on that, and be more a little bit more specific?
I think she's like always really focused in class and she'll like listen to everything. Plus, she'll also like take a look at what everyone around her is doing so she'll know if they need help like immediately.
So she's really aware. She's not only taking in things that's happening for class, but she's also taking in her surroundings and her peers. That's fantastic. I really like that. That's again a very important skill to have for her. And the fact that you're able to pick up on that instead of just making it, oh, she's a nice person overall. The fact that you're able to put that into words for us to hear shows that you are aware of that behavior, and that not only are you appreciative of it, I assume, uh, but perhaps if there is room for it, that you would be able to take that behavior, make it your own, and kind of improve yourself in that way. And I think that's a really cool way of approaching self-improvement, not just the idea that it's all about how you got to be as good as you can be, but taking things from people who you see around you and making yourself better. I think that's a really cool way of going about that. And so with that, we're actually going to wrap this up a little bit early. I told you to be a shorter lesson today, um, because I want to really hammer home this skill. And so there will be homework posted within the next 24 hours, give or take, but I'll preview it here. Um, I'm going to ask that everyone choose two people who are like arm's length. So arm's length to me means that you see them quite a lot. You see them at school or an extracurricular. You know them fairly well. If you were in a group project with them, you'd be happy with it. But you've never been to their house, you haven't met their parents, stuff like that. We all have those kinds of classmates where you see them on campus, you wave, you say hi, you talk to them, but you go home over summer break, you never hear about them till the next school year. I want you to choose two people that kind of fit into that category. And then also pick one teacher, don't pick Mr. Evola, one teacher you have. Um, for each of those people, you're going to give that three word sentence. Oh, so and so is blank. And then I'm going to ask you to elaborate a little bit on the way that they demonstrate that positive adjective through the means, and then a little bit of speculation as to what their motives could possibly be. And when you kind of bring it all together, it'll be a written response. We'll put it on Google Classroom. You can respond there. Details will be on there later. But I'm asking that everyone does this before the next meeting, just so we can kind of have this ready to talk about for the next meeting as we jump into our next topic. But yeah, if everyone could do that this week, again, I'll post it in Google Classroom. I think it'll be a great way to kind of practice that investigation appreciation muscle that really isn't stressed at all. And so with that, thank you guys for showing up today. Appreciate it. I'll stick around for a little bit to talk a little bit more if we want to. Other than that, we'll see you soon. For those of you going to Birdsell, we'll see you this Saturday.